Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of the What's Buzzin podcast of the Hive Podcast Network. Myself, Nick Frias, and Justin McLean along with me. Unfortunately, no Noah Simon today. He gets the day off. It's an off day for him, gentlemen. Um, but we're going to get into the Eastern Conference standings predictions for the three of us. Maybe we'll post Noah's up somewhere just so you guys can take a look at that as well. But gentlemen, anything you guys have to say before we get into this? Any hot takes or bold predictions just to start the episode off?
I
I'm just
mean,
waiting to see what Nick has to say because all I got is some of his picks are interesting.
they're definitely
So
interesting. It's
I
gonna
want to
start
see where this
something.
takes us.
It's
Uh,
gonna
that that's what you guys brought me here is for the interesting
Spice things
and
up.
exactly. I'm here to spice things up. Portuguese,
hey,
we
you,
do.
you spice things up in the Western Conference.
I'll
That's
tell you
for
right now,
sure.
it's gonna continue in the East. Don't you worry.
That was pretty
Goodness.
crazy. All right, we're gonna start in the Metro Division. We're gonna go one or eight up into one, and then we're gonna move to the Atlantic, do the same thing, and then same as the Western Conference in episode 2, we're gonna move to the wild card and do 10 through 1. So same format as the previous episode. If you watched, if you haven't, what are you doing? Go watch it, then watch this, and let's get going, boys. Eighth in the Metro. I'll start us off. I have the Columbus Blue Jackets at eighth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I have Columbus at 8 too. I mean, uh, like, I don't know. They lost obviously Johnny Gaudreau and obviously Matthew Gaudreau this summer in that terrible accident, and the emotional impact alone might be the reason this team underperforms. I mean, forget about like the players, the skill, the line of construction. Losing a teammate, I can only imagine how like debilitating and emotionally hard that is for everybody on that team. And then when you look at Johnny Gaudreau, the player, I don't see anybody they brought in or anybody that can step into his place and provide the same production that he would provide for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I'm with you. Unfortunately, I have them at 8. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the Blue Jackets shock everybody,
Me too.
but I just don't see it.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I do think they'll finish last in the Metro Division. I hope, like you said, for their sake and everything that's happened recently with them. Obviously, first and foremost, rest in peace to Johnny Gaudreau. Thoughts and prayers to his family, his teammates, and you mentioned the player he is as a whole. Extremely talented player, and I feel extremely bad for Sean Monahan, who signed in Columbus for part of the reason was just to play once again with Johnny Gaudreau. The two of them really good friends, really good teammates, and had a lot of good chemistry. So thoughts and prayers to the Gaudreau family, friends, teammates. But unfortunately, I just their lineup isn't really deep. Doesn't really have star power. Their defense is sneaky decent when you look at the top four of Werenski, Severson, Provorov, and Jurchek. Like that's not bad. That's probably not the worst in the East, to be honest. But then when you look at the rest of the team, like the star power is kind of lacking. They have younger guys like Fantilli. He's gonna probably be good in a few years, and same with like Marchenko, Sillinger, Kent Johnson. Really interested to see what he does this season. But I think the main reason for me specifically with the Blue Jackets is that goaltending
Yeah.
is not good. Tarasov and Merzlikins, it's just not simply to me, it's not NHL caliber.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I've got Columbus at the bottom for the same reasons. You want to see this team do well. I didn't want to have to put them at the bottom,
No.
but just with how good the East is and the Blue Jackets on the ice just aren't there compared to some of the other teams in the East and the Metro. But like you said, I want to see what that defense does in the future with Juracek, Matejchuk's there. They just added Jordan Harris. So this team will be good soon, just they're just not there yet.
Yeah, I completely agree with the both of you there. So far nothing bold from Nick, so that's good.
Yeah, one
But
down.
one down. We'll see if that changes right here. We'll start with you, Nick, seventh in the Metro.
Oh, so seventh, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh, of
Uh,
course you do.
look, I came with reasoning. Okay.
Yeah, let's hear it. I'll tell you why you're wrong afterwards.
Oh, I'm sure you will. They're an aging team. I mean, a lot of their guys, I think some of their best years are behind them. I mean, Crosby's still good. 94 points good? I don't think so. Look, Crosby's getting up there. I do think
Like,
he's still a point per game guy. I still think he's a
mm,
point per game guy.
mhm.
But I like their top six. I think the top six can get it done. The bottom six is another question. In my mind, hardly any forward depth. I asked myself, like, besides Crosby, Malkin, and Rust, who's going to score for the forwards? I know you're going to say Michael Bunting, Rutger McGroarty. He's a rookie. Still want to wait. Uh, I don't know. It's a mixture of. I think there's just better teams in the Metro. I'm not a huge fan of the bottom six, and their goaltending is kind of roll the dice. I mean, Tristan Jarry,
Mhm.
903 save percentage last year, could be a bounce back candidate, but it's really an aging team, and you could see a decline because of Father Time himself.
You make some good points, as I do think there's kind of a clump in the Metro of those non-playoff teams to maybe a team that could squeak in the wild card spot. And I think those 4 or 5 teams can order in any way.
Yeah,
But
7-4.
yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't be shocked to see it in any different combination. But I honestly think the Pittsburgh Penguins are better than they were the year before. Last year, if their power play was just okay, they're into the playoffs. They only missed by 2 points. And I've been hearing that Sidney Crosby's going to fall off for the past 8 seasons, and he's yet to do it. So we can do it again this summer. But for me, it's the Philadelphia Flyers in that spot. Um, I think they are the second worst team in the Metro on paper. They obviously had a great year last year, but you saw it in the second half of the season that it just wasn't really sustainable what they were doing. They're missing a goalie without Carter Hart now. It's either going to be Erson or Fedotov that takes over the starting spot. Um, there's just not too much to like on that team. There's some pieces. I'm a big fan of Owen Tippett. Travis Konecny's a point per game player, but it's just not enough for me to move them any higher.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Justin. I also have the Flyers at seventh in the Metro. I do think their lineup is like we've already mentioned it a couple times between the three of us that the East is extremely deep. The East,
Yeah,
in my opinion, is much deeper than the West. There's just a lot of teams that are not necessarily good teams, but there's a lot of just competitive teams, teams that you're not going to blow out every night. You're gonna win games by one or two, overtime games, shootouts. Like the East is just really deep for me. And like when you look at the Flyers, their team is like sneakily improving. Like their third line right now, listed as Farabee, Lawton, and Bobby Brink, is not like terrible. I'm a huge Tyson Forrester guy. To be honest with you, he's on their first line right now. That's probably a bit high for him for sure. I'd rather see him in the middle six. I think he is probably better suited there for a team that's trying to make the playoffs for sure. Couturier is still around. We'll see how Tortorella treats him if he scratches him again. But again, I think a lot of what happens with Philadelphia this year will hinge on Tortorella and how he coaches them. Because look at last year, they were in the wild card race or in a wild card spot until about the 60, 70 game mark when they just plummeted and had like a 8 game losing streak or something like that. So the Flyers, I think they're slowly improving for sure. But I just don't like them as much as like Pittsburgh's top end talent. Like I don't think they have the top end talent. Like their top pair is Cam York, Travis Sanheim, their first line Couturier, Mitchkov. I'm excited to see for sure, and Forrester. That doesn't really compare to like Pittsburgh having Crosby and Malkin still around. Rust is still a really good top six player. And then Letang and Carlson. Carlson won the Norris 2 years ago. Letang's still a very steady defenseman. If they get good starts of Jari and Nedeljkovic, there's no reason why Pittsburgh should be above Philadelphia in my eyes. And I guess I'll lead that rate in. And for those reasons, Pittsburgh I have at six. So six is Pittsburgh for me. Uh, like a lot of points that Nick brought up, they're slowly aging out. I don't buy into the fact that Crosby is going to regress. He may regress by like a few points, but like, what are you going to do? He's getting older, and if he regresses by a couple points each season, I know Justin, as a Pens fan, you won't complain with that. A couple points every season of regression, still a point per game player in his mid 30s. He's unbelievable, and on a side note, that contract extension he signed, unbelievable. He could have cashed out, got well over 10 million, 11 million even. But he decided to stick around for the rest of his career, most likely, unless he decides to play even further into his career. And that 8.7 is a darling of a contract for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I like their top end talent. I don't like their depth into the bottom six, like Nick, you mentioned. I don't trust it as much. And their bottom pair, I also don't really trust in Sebastian Aho and Matt Grzelcyk. But I think they'll be better than Philadelphia. So I have them at six. Who do you got at six, Justin?
At six, I have the Washington Capitals. I can't put the Penguins there just yet.
Just yet.
I just think the Penguins are better than the Capitals. You can call me biased if you want, but look at the
Honest.
team. Like, yeah, they made a bunch of big moves, but how much better did they really get? Like Andrew Mangiapane, it's good. It's not great. Pierre-Luc Dubois, y- there was so much hype for him being traded last year, and look what happened. So I don't know. It's a lot in wait and see with the Capitals, but Ovi, he had a terrible start to last season. If he does that again, I'm not sure the Capitals can afford that. But defense, like I like the addition of Jacob Chikrin and Matt Roy, but again, I don't know if I could put them above the Penguins. Again, you can call me biased. Charlie Lindgren, he had a good year last year, but he's a career backup goalie. It's the Capitals could be good, but there's I don't think there's any shot they get back into the playoffs like they did last year. They barely squeaked in, and it was because of a couple bad runs from other teams. I don't think it happens again this year.
Ah, man, there's gonna be some takes later on. I can tell you right now, my Metro
Oh my
compared
God, where do you
to
have them?
your well, just wait till you hear my number six because I already know there's gonna be a reaction to this. Number six, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. Uh, that's just
What?
see the reaction.
Excuse me?
Yep.
They
I
probably have the
have the.
best decor in the entire NHL.
Yeah,
I mean, I got my
even
reasons. Well, I got my reasons. Trust me. See,
Let's
I
hear it.
am a lot higher on other Metro teams, but let's just get the reasons, okay? People are already going into this season and they're talking bad about Carolina. Look, everybody's talking about how they regressed. I don't think they've regressed as bad as some people are saying, but there definitely is a regression. They lost Gensel, they lost Shea. Those are two pretty big losses. And like I'll give them credit, at least defensively, they replaced Shea with Gostisbehere. He was sneaky last year with 56 points for the Red Wing. Their defense does look fine. The concern I have is their offense. Second line left wing is Jack Roslovic right now. I don't think that's an ideal second line left winger. And then when you look at goaltending, Freddie Anderson can't seem to stay healthy. He's always a question mark on how many games he can start. Kochekov was good, 911 save percentage in 48 games. But if Freddie is limited to 16 games again, Kochekov's going to increase the starts. And I don't know if he can handle a starter's workload just because we haven't seen it yet. Like you guys said, their defense is good. I really like their defense. It's the forwards and it's the goaltending. I don't know how far those forwards can take them. I like their first line. From there down, I'm not a fan of Carolina at all. They have pieces on the second line, but third, fourth line isn't great. And then the goaltending, I'm a lot lower on, I think, Kochetkov than most. And this is also just riding on Freddie Anderson not being healthy again. You can't bet anymore that Freddie Anderson is going to give you 40 or 50 games. You can't. He might give you 20, he might give you 25. So I'm lower on Carolina. I'm very curious to see where you guys put him.
Wow,
I
that
I
is
definitely think the Hurricanes regress, but I don't know if I could put them lower than like the Islanders,
yeah.
the Capitals, and
Yeah, like
to your Jack Roslovic point, he was a first line winger on the President's Trophy, winning Rangers last year.
I
But like
mean
he wasn't producing at like a first line level rate. Like it's I don't know. I'm
it's
lower on
We'll
Jack
see.
Ross.
We'll
it's
see, and
fair
we'll revisit.
points. There's fair points there, but it's still pretty bold to have them that low for me. Like I get what you're saying with their goaltending and their forwards not being as deep, but for me, like even if Freddie can't stay healthy and you got to throw like Kochekov to the woods or to the Wolves, sorry, for a little bit of the season, for me, I think that defense is so good that it'll be able to make up for the lack of goaltending there. If there is, I still think he's a steady goalie, and if he can at least be average, the decor is good enough to win them games. And I think for the forwards at least, yeah, they took a hit, but it's still a Rod Brindamore coach team, and they're still going to find ways to produce offensively. I think they shouldn't have to worry too much about losing offense. They will, like you both mentioned, they will regress. But regardless, I'll get to Carolina later and their stacked defense. But talk about good defense. I got the Islanders at number five. I have them a bit lower than previous seasons for them, but I do like their defense still. It's very solid. The all six are very solid. They don't have any wowing guys outside of Noah Dobson, really. But when you go through it, Dobson, Romanov, Pelech, Pollock have been a good pair in this league for far too long now. And Mike Riley and Scott Mayfield is no slouch either on the third pair. I just they still to me don't have that scoring punch. And I think they kind of went and addressed that by drafting Cole Iserman in the draft, which I think is a great fit for them. But like obviously he's not ready to come and step in this year. I do think that the Duclair addition for them kind of helps a bit with a bit of scoring touch that they desperately need it. And he's listed as on their first line right now and makes sense to be playing with Barzell or pure playmaker and Bo Horvat, a good two-way center. So their first line of Duclair, Horvat, and Barzell I like, but then it really drops down from there. Like Holmstrom, Nelson, Palmieri, that's all right. Anders Lee, JG Pajot, and Pierre Engvall, all right. I can't even pronounce this guy's name on their fourth line left wing, to be honest with you. I'm not even going to try. Maybe I'll put it on screen right here, but I'm not even going to try. And then Cizikas and Julian Gauthier. I like Sorokin, if he can absolutely hold them up on the back of his shoulders, maybe they squeak in. But for me, this team's just not deep enough. It doesn't have the star talent. We'll see what Patrick Waugh can do with them. I really like him as a coach, but I just don't see the pieces there to be higher up in this division.
Oh man,
Go
we
ahead. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
well, mine is at five. I'm Philadelphia Flyers. Uh, don't have them making the playoffs. It's not that shocking. There you go. But I do have them better, like I said, than the Hurricanes and Pittsburgh. Matvey Michkov is going to be gross. I mean, I he's the Calder favorite in my eyes. It wouldn't surprise you if he puts 30 as a rookie. I
Yeah.
mean, this guy was talked about as he was 1A and 1B with Connor Bedard at one point. So Matvey Michkov's talent is insane. Little worry about Tortorella, and we'll see how he does with a high energy. I don't want to call it showboaty, but Michkov, he likes to have fun out there, and Tortorella a little more old school. That's a slight worry, but I love their forward depth. I think they have three lines they can comfortably throw out there at any time. This team isn't going to have one player carrying the load offensively, but instead, I think they'll have 4 to 5 guys who'll get in between that 50 to 60 point range, then 1 or 2 guys that are getting 80 or 90. Defensively, I love their first pair with Cam York and Sanheim. I'm a really big Cam York fan. I think he's going to have a massive step this year. Nick Seeler, good defensively. I like the pairing with Jamie Drysdale. Obviously, Drysdale has the injury risk to him, but if he can stay healthy, a great puck moving defenseman. Goaltending is weak. Arison wasn't good, and we'll see who they put as the backup. But yeah, I like Philly. I think they're gonna be better offensively than many are giving them credit just because of the depth of the forward lines. But goaltending is definitely a worry.
Yeah, that's fair enough, but I agree with Kerwin. I have the New York Islanders at that five spot. It's they have a great decor, very similar to Carolina, and like you said, Kerwin, they don't have the goal scoring, but I don't know with this team. They do it every single year where people have them missing the playoffs and then they win every game by one goal or have a bunch of overtime losses and they squeak right in. It's
If
very
you could
annoying,
win a
especially when you
game,
cheer for a team in the Metro.
if you could win a game by half a goal, the Islanders would be the team to do it.
They'd have the most half a goal wins in the entire NHL. It's you
Yes.
score one goal and play defense. That's Islanders hockey. It's boring, but it works. At the end of the day, it works. They keep making the playoffs all the time. I have them missing, but I'm not going to be too shocked when they do the same thing that they've been doing the last however many seasons.
No, I totally agree. I have them in that five spot. If they do somehow squeak in the wild card spot, I'm literally not surprised at all.
Yeah.
Not surprised. But we'll move on to four. Nick, who do you got in the four spot in the Metro?
So, I do
So
have the I have the Washington Capitals. I think you guys are kind of hating on the Capitals a little too much. I love their offseason acquisitions. I love Mangiapane. He's a 20 to 30 goal guy, which they needed offense. They addressed it with Mangiapane. Tom Wilson had a pretty bad season for Tom Wilson. I understand the last couple of years have been iffy for him, but I'm expecting him to go back to that 2021-22 campaign for him when he had about 52 points. They bought low on a lot of guys. They bought low on Mangiapane. They bought low on Pierre-Luc Dubois. And then, I mean, Jacob Chikrin they got for a steal. PLD, I know we say it every year. This will be the time we finally see Pierre-Luc Dubois be Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's not an 80-point guy. He's not a 70-point guy. He's a 60-point guy. I think him playing with PLD, that second line is not going to be fun for people to face. You're going to have PLD who's going to be throwing the body. You're going to have Tom Wilson that's going to be throwing the body. Then you have Ovi with the scoring punch. Their defense, I mean, Roy and Chikrin, like Justin brought up before. I think this is an all-around solid team. Yes, the goaltending is iffy, but they brought in Logan Thompson, who has proven he can be reliable in the starting role. I think Washington's going to shock a lot of people this year, and we'll see what happens when we talk about the wild card later on.
Well, you're not being completely bold here, Nick, because I also have Washington at 4 in the Metro, and for a
Okay.
lot of the same reasons. A lot of the same reasons you do. I like what they did in the offseason. The only thing I didn't like is how they bought Cat Friendly. Honestly,
Yeah.
screw you, Washington,
Yeah.
for doing that. But I do like what they did in the offseason. Maybe they took that Cat Friendly and put it to good use because Mangiapane, like it. Like you said, PLD. I know we've said it before, but I'm gonna say it again, and I truly believe it this time that I think he's gonna concretely cement himself as an actual useful player on this team. I think he's the perfect kind of reclamation project. Washington's kind of in that stage of, yeah, we want to get OV the goal record, but we also want to start turning the page with some younger players that can kind of help us compete now, but can also be crucial pieces for their future. And I think PLD is a good reclamation buy low type of piece that you were talking about, Nick. And then yeah, their defense, Chikrin steal, absolute steal, and Roy. Sorry, is it Roy for sure? Because I
It's
keep
right.
bouncing back.
Pretty sure it's Roy.
It's right.
Roy.
Patrick
Okay.
Waugh just messed it up for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick Wall
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
messes everybody's head up because of that. But yeah, Matt Roy and Rasmus Sandin, that's a solid second pair. Roy can be a bit more of a stay-at-home guy as Sandin kind of is more offensive minded. Seen a lot of him in Toronto, and his defense is not wowing by any standards, but Sandin can be on your second pair and be all right. And then Faravari TVR as their third pair is serviceable. It's an NHL pair, third pair, and that's what they are. So the bottom six has a bit of depth to it when you look at Milano. I really liked what Lapierre did last season with the team. They brought in Duhaime as well over the offseason, another sneaky bottom six role player. Taylor Radish as well is another role player that they brought in. Like Nick Dowd, fourth line center. Like they have the pieces there to be a very not just competitive, be a very competitive team. And like you said, Nick, if Darcy Kemper can or no wait, sorry, Darcy Kemper left. With Lindgren, if he can repeat what he did last year, that's great. And even if he can't, Logan Thompson is a great safety net to have behind him, and he's proved that he can and he will be a starter in this league if he has to. So for me, I really like what Washington did. I see them being right on the cusp of that wild card race coming down to the last couple games of the season. I really like what they did this offseason. Justin, what do you got at 4 in the division?
Well, I wanted to put them higher, but this is where the Pittsburgh Penguins land for me. Yeah, you can disagree all you
Penguins
want.
don't land because they don't fly.
Right. Well, they're always landed. They stay landed. But um,
I'm curious to hear
I
this.
listen, hear me out.
Why are you doing
All
this
right.
to yourself?
No, yeah, I'm sure you want to talk about that with the jerseys behind you. Michael
Wow.
Bunting was a point per game player last year,
Oh,
besides
don't even get
Kenny
me
Malkin.
started.
Listen, Brian Rust was unbelievable last year when he was healthy. You bring in Rucker McGroarty, who's NHL ready now, and gives us the bit of a boost you need. The Penguins all of a sudden have a prospect pool, kind of, which is something new to all Penguins fans. Um, I don't know. I just think the biggest thing last year for the Penguins was their power play was bottom three in the league the entire season, and then you miss a playoff by 2 points. Now you get rid of the power play coach, bring a new guy in. If he could give you 10 more goals on the power play, maybe you squeak in the playoffs. That's really all it is. Their record, like they would go 1-7 in a 1 goal game on the power play, 0 for 4. It was awful, and that's what cost them a playoff spot. I think if that changes, they could get in this year. I had them outside of the top in the division spot, sorry, in the Metro. I'm not sure that they do get in, but I think they'll be better than some of the other teams we mentioned.
We'll see.
All right,
Pittsburgh's definitely a wild card for sure, and not wild card in the sense of like
there
they're
you
gonna
go.
make the wild card
Oh,
for sure. Just a wild card as far as like they could finish as low as where Nick had them. I believe you had them at 7, Nick,
Yep.
and they could finish in a wild card spot in my opinion. I have them kind of right between you guys at 6 in the division, but they could be low in the division, but they could also squeak into the playoffs. Like you said, Todd Reardon out the door. That power play was terrible. There's no other way to put it. It was bad. It was
oh yeah,
very bad. But
awful.
let's quickly rattle through the top three in the Metro division for the each of us. Our playoff teams according to each of our standings here. At number three, I don't have to talk about it too much because I already covered a lot of it. Carolina, like Rod Brindamore of a coach, as a coach, not like him actually. I love him. I think he's one of the top coaches in the league. Their forward depth took a bit of a hit, but I think it'll be fine under his coaching. Defense might be the best defensive core in the league. They lost Shea, but they replaced him with Gostisbehere, which is fine for the third pair. And then as long as between Freddie and Kochekov you can split those starts at least, then I do see them regressing from the previous season, which I believe they were second in the Metro last year, but they're still a divisional spot for me. So Carolina's at 3.
Yeah, I've got the same team as you, Kerwin. We talked about it already. I think they got worse. I don't think they're worse than like the Penguins, Islanders, Capitals, though. They're still better than those teams for me. And that's in the Metro Division, that's good enough to get you the third spot. And I think that's where they'll land with Rod Brindamore, like you said, incredible coach. The decor is still amongst the best in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
And the forwards aren't terrible. Not as good as they were. They're not terrible. So I think
Right.
they'll sit pretty comfortably in that third spot.
Well, I mean, I have the Islanders at 3. You guys made the point for me. Everybody always counts them out every year, yet they somehow trickle their way in. I
I mean, that's
think
all you
for
really have to say.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, like everybody counts them out and they always end up back in. The Islanders are built for playoff hockey. They're gritty. You're right. They're not a fun team to watch. Any Islanders fans out there, I do feel bad for you because I couldn't watch 2-1 hockey games every day. That is not fun, but they're good defensively. Sorokin's great. They have just enough firepower offensively. Like I said, they're gonna win games 2-1. They're gonna win games 3-1. Everybody's counting them out now, but they'll make the playoffs again. They prove everybody wrong every single year, and this is another year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever, but
Yeah.
I'm also not going to be surprised when this year the New Jersey Devils go from being a non-playoff team last year and then make the playoffs this year, where I have them in the second spot in the Metro Division. They made a lot of good moves over the offseason, a healthier team this year. Obviously, they lost out on Jack Hughes for a lot of the season last year, harmed them. I think Heischer was out for a bit of an extended period of time as well, which is one of the best defensive forwards in the game, one of the best two-way forwards as well. His offense is no slouch either. I'm just gonna rattle off their lines here, all of them, and you can't tell me this is not a good team. Palat, Heischer, Bratt, Meyer, Hughes, Mercer, who they just signed today, Tatar, Holla, and Stefan Nason, and then their fourth line of Paul Cotter, Curtis Lazar, Nathan Bastian. That's not a wowing fourth line. The fourth line is probably the worst of their
Uh,
forward group.
That's a tough fourth line to play against,
It
though.
is. It
That's
is
a
tough to
big
It's
play
fourth
gritty.
against.
line.
It's gritty.
It
Yeah.
is a grind you down kind of fourth line. And then their defense is with Carolina up there as among the league's best. When you look at Siegenthaler and Dougie Hamilton as the top pair, you have Brendan Dillon, Brett Pesci, and then you have Jonathan Kovacevic and Simone Nemec there. But you're also that's without Luke Hughes in the picture because he's going to miss 4 to 8 weeks, I believe, to start the year with an injury, surgery or non-surgery. But it's going to take a while to heal up. So once you take Kovacevic there and put in Luke Hughes, backed up by their revamped goaltending of Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen. Solid tandem, very solid tandem. I got New Jersey too, and I didn't even think twice about it.
I think our top three teams are exactly the same, Kerwin. You said it perfectly. They're very injury riddled last year, and I think the biggest piece coming back for them this year is going to be Dougie Hamilton.
Yeah.
He's when you're missing your number one defenseman all year, it's real tough to make the playoffs. Uh, with him back, I think that just makes everything better for New Jersey. It makes their forwards better. He's going to be able to get them the puck easier. He's got one of the hardest slap shots in the NHL
Mhm.
and will deliver that on the power play. So that's another option. He can move the puck well, and the guy's 6'6". So I think that's the biggest addition for them. And then if Heischer and Hughes can both stay healthy, those are your one and two centers. So you miss your number one defenseman and both your top two centers, you're not going to make the playoffs. If those guys stay healthy, that'll be the big secret for them. And then, like you said, Markstrom and net just makes them that much better.
And just one last point about the rain, or sorry, the Devils. Um, I think Sheldon Keefe's going to be a great coach for them. Yeah, I think he's going to do good things for them. Nick, what do you got it to?
Believe it or not, I actually agree with you guys. And I
Wow.
also, I
Oh,
know
wow.
this is shocking. We'll have the same top two teams.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys pretty much rattled off all the points. I mean, the Devils are, like you guys said, they're getting just their guys back. They're getting Hughes back, getting Heischer back, getting Dougie back. And those are
Mhm.
three mainstay guys on the team. And then Markstrom. I like Markstrom. I might be a little down on him than some just because, like, I know some people want to talk about how he was last year, and a large majority of his down year was due to the Calgary defense. It could potentially just be he's getting older. I still think he'll be great. He'll be the best goaltender that New Jersey had opposed to last year. So New Jersey will still be fine, but I don't think we're going to be seeing like a Vezina type performance out of Markstrom. He'll be good enough. But and then obviously Keefe coming in, it'd be such a Leafs thing to fire your coach, then he would go on and then bring a team to the playoffs, maybe bring them to the second round, potentially the third round. I don't know. Well, yeah, it's just a Leafs thing.
We'll have to see how Keep does in New Jersey, but I do expect to see good things out of their team. But that means the three of us all agree on the winner of the Metro Division. And I think it's pretty
Yeah.
self-explanatory. I see why we all have them there. It's the New York Rangers. Eastern Conference Final against the Panthers last year. The Panthers weren't being denied simply in the playoffs last year. They weren't being beaten. The Rangers gave them a pretty decent run for their money, if I do say so myself. They have the star talent in Panarin, Trocheck. Lafreniere really took a step last year, and if he can do that again this year, that will really help for them. Now they're looking for Capo Caco maybe to take a step. That would be huge for them. Zibanejad, like Kreider, their power plays lethal. Riley Smith they added this offseason. He could be a great middle six guy for them. And then you look at their defense. Lindgren, love him. Adam Fox, one of the best in the league. VC Carrick and Brodzinski is their fourth line. Again, like New Jersey's, not world beating, but like they'll be a tough to play against kind of fourth line. Um, yeah, and then Keandre Miller, Jacob Trouba second pair, like Braden Schneider on your third pair. I think is phenomenal. And then I don't really have to talk about him more than saying his name, Igor Shesterkin. One of the best goalies in the league, top five undoubtedly, in my opinion at least. The Rangers should have this division locked up.
Yeah, like you said, I think they have the best goalie and defenseman in the entire
Mm-hmm.
Metro Division for sure. And you can argue the best forward in Panarin too.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they're also tough to play against. Jacob Trouba will put your head through the boards if he sees you with your head down. And Braden Schneider's done that before too. So, and Keandre Miller's huge himself. It's just
Massive.
there's so much skill and there's so much meat. And we're forgetting about Matt Rempe too, who will just
Yeah.
fight anybody he sees.
Yeah.
So they're tough to play against and they're just good and they have one of the best goalies in the NHL. There's not too much to say. It I wouldn't be shocked if they won the President's Trophy again this year.
Yeah,
As
me
much as I
neither.
dislike them, I think
Yeah,
they
I
will do
wouldn't be
well.
surprised if they do it again. I think me and Justin covered most of it, but anything you wanna add on top of that, Nick?
Matt Rempe is going to be the X factor. He's going to have 60 goals, 50 assists, 200 penalty minutes. That's what he's doing. But I
Matt
mean,
Rempe is going to win the Hart this year.
Matt
Uh,
Rempe Hart.
Matt
He's
Rempe
gonna
Hart
play for less than
Rangers.
half the game every night. He's gonna spend half it in the box.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter though, because the Rangers, in all of our eyes, are going to win the Metro Division. But now let's move on to the very, very stacked Atlantic Division. Okay, Nick, do you have any bold predictions for eighth in the Atlantic Division?
Uh, I mean, it might be a little bold. I don't think it is, but eighth in the Atlantic, I have the Ottawa Senators. Uh, I'm worried about Ulmark. I'll be honest with you. I mean, his numbers have been great, but he hasn't played more than 50 games in a season ever, and is now going to be behind a worse defense in Ottawa. I mean, when you look at the forwards for Ottawa, Josh Norris's health is always a question mark. If he's out, which Josh Norris could very well be out, Shane Pinto would most likely move to the second line. Good, not great. Defense has pieces, but Artem Zub on the first line is a bit worrisome. Ottawa isn't bad. I mean, I can see them finishing sixth. I feel like eight through six in the Atlantic, you can move in any way possible. I'm just lower on Olmark than I think most are, which is kind of the reason why Ottawa is in eighth for me.
I do not have Ottawa at eighth, but I do agree with you in the sense of the bottom three, six, seven, and eight in the Atlantic are very interchangeable, but they're going to be the three same teams. But for me, I have the Montreal Canadiens. They have a very, very bright future. I hate saying that. Of course, you look behind me. I don't like saying that at all. But Montreal has a very good prospect pool. They've been building it. They've been making sneaky trades, adding draft picks, and doing good on those draft picks. Demidov, I think, is a great pickup for them at this year's draft for sure. The first line right now, it's Slavkovsky, Suzuki, and Caulfield. That's only going to get any better, or only going to get better. And Martin St. Louis is a phenomenal coach to be developing those guys for sure. But then when you go down their team, it just kind of drops off. Newhook, Doc, and Line is a decent second line, and then from there on, I'm not going to list off the lines, but like it's nothing wowing. They don't have the depth. Like I guess Gallagher on your fourth line's not awful. Their fourth lines are pretty hard to play against line, but it's not it's not going to be able to outscore other teams' bottom sixes, in my opinion. And then their defense is very shaky. Like Matheson and Gooley hasn't like quite proven himself as like a fully established defenseman in the NHL. He's shown very good signs. He's gonna get there in like a year or two. He's gonna be a very solid top four guy. But Matheson, who knows, he's kind of hit or miss from season to season. He could have a good season, a bad season. Lane Hudson, love him, think he's going to be great. But then you go on from there. Savard, Jackeye, and Justin Barron isn't great. And another thing that isn't great, in my opinion, is their goaltending between Montembeau and Primo. So I think they have probably the worst goaltending in the Atlantic. Maybe Detroit's pushing them a little bit because they just have three goalies who are mid. But for me, Montreal's at eight. Who do you got, Justin?
At eighth in the Atlantic, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. No, I'm messing with you. I have the
You
Montreal
imagine?
Canadiens. I have the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah, like you said, Kerwin. The only thing is, I do think Mike Matheson will be just fine. And the thing that Matheson's going to bring to the Canadians is he's going to be able to really help Lane Hudson in his offensive game. I think start of the season, you'll see Mike Matheson be on the first power play unit, and at some point throughout, I think Lane Hudson will take it over. And like you said, and such a bright future and a great coach in Marty St. Louis. Um,
Mhm.
they're just not there yet. Ivan Demidov is could arguably be the best pick of the draft between him and Celebrini. But I'm they're just not there yet. Maybe next year they might find themselves in a playoff spot, but not now.
No, I completely agree with you. So in that case, who do you have at seven in Atlantic?
I have the Ottawa Senators. It's just I assume a flip flop of what Nick has, but you never know. The Senators again, it's every single year they're supposed to make it. But what did they really do this year that separates them anything from last year? Obviously, the all-market addition's big. They had arguably the worst goaltending in the NHL, but you're going for playing behind Carlo, McAvoy, Lindholm to playing behind. Yes, Sanderson and Shabbat are great, but not as good as Boston's defense. I don't think it's as well structured of a team for Allmark to be playing behind. And even in Boston, he was the 1B to a backup goalie, right? So I just don't think Ottawa is going to be there just yet.
Yeah, Nick might have the flip-flop of you, but I have the exact same as you. I got Ottawa at 7. I really don't have to add much to what you said. They didn't do much to improve their team over the offseason except bank on Allmark being just as good as he was in Boston in Ottawa, which I don't think he will be. This, like you said, the system, the structure, the coaching isn't as good for Ottawa as Boston, in my opinion. And their depth is mid at best. At best, like Ridley Gregg and Michael Amadio in their bottom six is all right, but like they added Gregor, role player for the fourth line, McEwen on their fourth line. Like the only really like impact player they brought in was like David Perron, and he's getting up there in age, and he doesn't necessarily even bring like a whole lot of scoring. He can pot you probably 20 to 30 goals maybe if he has a good season, but they didn't do enough for me. And it's every year that Ottawa's going to take that next step. They're going to take that next jump. They're going to be better. They might be better by a couple points this year than last year if things go their way and injuries don't hit them, but I don't see them being much better than seventh in my opinion.
So I'll bring up a team here at 7 that we haven't brought up yet. The Detroit Red Wings I have at 7th, and a couple reasons why. I mean, first off, they have 5 goalies that are all backups. I mean, Casa maybe you can put as the starter. I know they used a high pick on him, like I think 14th, 15th overall, but he hasn't proven himself. So I don't know who's going to start in net there. I don't know if it's Jack Campbell. I don't know if it's Cam Talbot. I don't know if it's Husso, Lyon. I don't know who it is. So their goaltending is a mess. Whoever it is starting isn't going to be good. I do love their first line. I think their first line of Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat is really good. I think it's sneaky still. I don't think Raymond and DeBrincat, I don't think anybody actually on that first line gets the respect they deserve. They're all very, very good. But besides that first line, I'm expecting down seasons from Kane and Tarasenko. They're aging, if you can't tell already with the whole Eastern Conference. I'm down on aging guys. I think it was the same thing with Crosby, who I did say would be point per game, but I don't think Kane is going to be a point per game guy. I think Tarasenko is going to have a bit of a down year. He was, playing with Florida on the second half, and he was decent, but I don't know. You look at their defense, Jeff Petrie on the second line, Ben Sherratt first line. These are like some nice complementary pieces, but Ben Sherratt can't be on your first line. Petrie can't be on your second line. So you have a weak defense playing in front of weak goaltending with subpar offense. Yeah, I'm gonna put Detroit at 7. They're just That's the best way to describe them is meh.
Yeah, subparts are just meh is pretty solid for them, and it also relates. I'll bring another team into the mix. You brought Detroit into the mix. I'm gonna bring Buffalo into the mix as my sixth team in the Atlantic Division. Tage Thompson, like if he can stay healthy, hopefully for Buffalo's sake, he can repeat what he did 2 seasons ago because he had a bit of a fall off last year compared to the season prior when he rarely broke out in the NHL. That O'Reilly trade with St. Louis finally looked like it panned out for the Sabres. But outside, like they're in similar position to Montreal. They have a lot of young pieces. They're gonna progressively get better. I feel like with Buffalo and Montreal though, like they are gonna like get better and actually get better, not gonna stay stagnant like Ottawa has been the last few years. But like JJ Paterka impressed last year. That first line of him, Thompson, and Tuck is very solid. Zach Benson, we'll see what he can do this year if he can really take the next step in his game and being like a solid NHL guy. He was all right last year. Dylan Cousins and like Jack Quinn, like that's a mid second line to me. That's and again, like you said, Nick, it's meh. Like Benson, Cousins, and Quinn is meh. They add Jason Zucker. They have pieces. The Ryan McLeod trade. Let's just talk about that for a second. Trading away Matt Savoie for for Ryan McLeod. I'm sorry, Buffalo, but I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking, Nick. I bet you're loving
Oh,
that.
I'm a very happy
Absolutely
person. I'm a very happy
very
person
happy
with that
person
trade.
after that trade. But yeah, outside of that, like Greenway's all right. Like Peyton Krebs fourth line center is pretty good actually, now that I kind of look at it, but still not better than that's the problem with a lot of the Atlantic teams. These rosters aren't necessarily bad. The Atlantic is just that
The other teams are good.
that friggin' good, to be honest with you. That defense is gonna feed families in the future. Power, Darlene, Byram, Yokoharu, like Samuelson is even underrated. Like that defense is gonna be good in a couple years. And then I do like the tandem of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and also Devin Levi, who struggled last year, but every young goalie is probably going to have a struggle here or there. It was just very prominent for Levi, and people kind of jumped on it right away. But I think he will figure it out, and I think it's nice that they have UPL there as a bit of a safety net. If Levi is struggling, you can feel comfortable putting UPL in. But still, as a whole, they bring in Lindy Ruff back again to coach the Sabres for his second stint. He's a mid coach as well. Like it's a lot of meh. So I see Buffalo slotting in at 6.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kerwin. As much as I want to see Buffalo have a really good year, and I think it's possible. Like it's possible this team could get up there if things go well. It's just like you said, they're not their roster on paper is not as good as some of the other teams in the Atlantic Division. It's the thing with Lindy Ruff though is he did this same thing with New Jersey. They were still a young team, kind of in the exact same spot as where Buffalo is now, and then they had that 16 game win streak or whatever it was 2 seasons ago and made the playoffs. So I could see that being the case for Buffalo if everything goes well. You mentioned Devin Levi, how he struggled. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen struggled early in his career as well, so he could follow the same trajectory. And then on top of that, like you said, the left side, that left side, if it's not now, it will be soon. The best left side in all of hockey. Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, Owen Byram, and Samuelson are all left-handed defensemen. It's that that decor is going to be very good. If Dahlin has a great year, again, Buffalo could be better than where I have him this year. But so you're looking at all the rosters on paper, this is where Buffalo falls for me.
Yeah.
I'll make mine short and quick. You've already brought them up, the Montreal Canadiens. That's my sixth team. I'm higher on them than obviously you guys are. I really like that line A addition. I think their top six is gonna be, especially that second line of Newhook, Doc, and Line A. Line A could score 40 goals this year. It genuinely would not shock me if that second line just feeds Line A. And then the first line of Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, that is going to be such a good line, not only this year, but as like we keep going into the future. Montreal has such a bright future, but their bottom six isn't there. They have a couple pieces on defense, like you said, with Lane Hudson, Ken Gooley, Mike Matheson, underrated. And then their goaltenders are not great with Primo and Montembeau. So they have pieces. They're not there yet. Give it a season or two, and I think you see Montreal in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like their future is extremely bright. But let's move on now to 5. And Justin, I believe 8 through 8, 7, 6. We've been exactly the
Yep.
same so far. So let's see if that trend continues.
I think it
At
just might.
five, at 5, I feel like it is going to continue. Nick brought
Yeah.
them up. I have the Detroit Red Wings at 5. And there we go again.
Yep. Yep.
We
It
are
continues.
exactly on track here for the first 4 teams, or the 4 bottom teams in the Atlantic Division. Stevie Y, love him as a general manager. I will say he's made some questionable choices in the last couple of seasons. That Justin Hall signing, you wouldn't see me signing that contract. I'll tell you that much. But I do like what he's done. I do think Patrick Kane is gonna start to regress even more this year, like you said, Nick. But I don't know if it's just me, but I'm still a really big Patty Kane guy. I think he can still get it done. You're not going to count on him to be defensive. You're going to count on him to be on your power play and make your power play better and produce offensively in your top 6. And that's what he's going to do on their second line with Tarasenko and Comfer. I like that second line, has veteran experience with Kane and Tarasenko. All you got to worry about is their health. And JT Comfer is a solid two-way guy. DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond, you already mentioned that as their first line. Really like that. And then they just have the role players in the bottom 6 who aren't great. But they're also not as kind of meh as I think for Buffalo and Ottawa. You look at Rasmussen, Andrew Kopp, and Christian Fischer. That's a decent third line to me, really. And then Tyler Mott, I think, is one of the most underrated role players in the league. One of the best penalty killers. One of the best just minute eaters in the bottom 6 of a team. He can go out there and play against players that are better than him. Is what I'm trying to get at. Like he won't do a wowing job, but he can play players that are better than him and stick in his own, and he's on a line with Valeno and Jonathan Berggren, who also just got re-signed in Detroit. Their defense, I won't go through it again because you already really went through it. Petrie isn't great on the second line. Love Mo Sider, and then I don't know who's going to start either. I don't know. I'm assuming it'll be one of Huso or Talbot, but whoever, like you said, whoever it is starting probably isn't going to be great. But I think they'll be good enough along with their team as a whole. Also, think the coaching is underrated when you look at Lalonde. Uh, I think they'll be fine. I think Detroit will be they'll be fine. But like that's how I put it. They're not going to be amazing, but they're not going to be bad. They'll just be okay.
Yeah, I think whatever two goalies show up to the rink first are going to be the guys that get the starting and backup job. Whoever gets there first. Uh, but yeah, I do have the Red Wings in the same spot as you, Kerwin. I think with that first line, I wouldn't be shocked to see Tarasenko take DeBrincat's spot, and then you keep Kane and DeBrincat together on the second line. I think you want to keep Raymond and Larkin together and DeBrincat and Kane together because that's proven to work for them. But
Mhm.
yeah, the goaltending and defense, there's no doubt about it. It's pretty questionable. Um, you get rid of Jake Wallman, who was arguably the second best defenseman on the team. So now you're stuck with Petrie, Sherratt, and Justin Hall all on the same decor.
Eric
It's
Gustafson, if you want
not
to throw him
great.
in the mix.
Yeah, I mean that could be a power play guy replace Shane Gostisbehere, but there's not going to be too much defense being played outside of Mo Sider. But this is a
No.
team that missed the playoffs because John Tortorella pulled the goalie in regulation and he didn't know what was going on. So a couple things go different here and there. They don't have, I think it was like an 8 game losing streak or they lost 8 of 10 or something like that. And that's what really knocked them out of comfortably taking a wild card spot last year. I think if just that stuff doesn't happen, they can erase those silly mistakes. They can make
Mhm.
the playoffs for sure. But right now I have them just outside.
My five, I got the Buffalo Sabres. If half of their young guys hit, this is a good team. That's the thing. They have so much youth on this team that some of them have to hit. Jack Quinn has to hit. Paterka has to hit, right? Like, even let's say Peyton Krebs doesn't turn out to be anything, or I don't know, Bowen Byram isn't what people expect him to be. They have so much of a youth influx, and it's top end youth influx too. I think we see a bounce back from Tage Thompson. Their defense is great. We've already mentioned with Darlene, Power, Byram. I expect a improved season from UPL. And since this team is so young, as the season goes on, I just expect them to improve as well. So it's a young team. It's a lot of unproven guys, but it's guys with high ceilings. So like I said, as the season goes on, Buffalo is gonna, I don't want to say become a wagon, but become more of a threat. I can see them starting off slow, being in last. People are worried about Buffalo. Oh my God, what are we doing here? Maybe the young guys aren't here. We got to ship some guys out. And then right as the season goes, it's like a train. Starts off slow and then chug, chug, chugs, and it gets faster. That's Buffalo right there.
That's a good analogy, really.
That'll work.
And we're gonna keep chugging along
There we go.
to fourth in the Atlantic Division. Justin, who do you got? Let's see if
See
we
if it
keep going
keeps
here.
up. I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Um, yep, okay, looks like it did. This team, they are well, it worries me that they let Steven Stamkos walk. At the end of the day, I do think Jake Gensel is a better overall player right now, but Stamkos has been the lifeblood of that franchise for
Mhm.
forever, and a big piece of why their power play was so good. It gave Nikita Kucherov ran that power play last year. He ran the Tampa Bay Lightning last year, but he had options to either give it a Braden Point in front or give it to Stamkos, who was teed up for the one timer. Now my worry is with Jake Gensel being left-handed that's not going to be as successful, I think. And likely Gensel is going to play on the line with Kucherov. So we'll see how that works. I could be completely wrong. It could work the same way. But this is a team that if things don't go well with the other teams in the Atlantic, they are in danger of missing the playoffs. I don't
Yeah.
think they will, but if they have some slumps here and there, they very well could. Mikhail Sergachev is a big loss as well. He ran the power play for them for the last few years. Great puck moving defenseman. I mean, you can't complain if Victor Hedman's running your power play, but Sergachev took that role so well. And Vasilevsky had a down year last year. So as the Lightning's defense has gotten worse and worse, so has Andre Vasilevsky. So
Mhm.
that could happen again this year. But it's tough to get to bet against those Stars, so I have them where I do. But we'll see. This is a team that if things don't go right, they could find themselves outside of the playoffs.
Yeah, there's not much more that I can say about the Lightning, and I couldn't agree more about if things don't go right for them, or if they get an injury to Vasilevsky, have a slow start out of the gate, they're at risk of missing the playoffs for the first time in a while. I don't remember the last time Tampa Bay has missed the playoffs. I think it was
2017.
28. I was going to say 2018, but 2017. Yeah, they've been a competitive team for a long time. And John Cooper is a big reason behind that. And I do trust in his ability to maintain the level of compete, maintain the level of tenacity that the Lightning have played with over the past few years. But I still can't bet a bet against their top guys like Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman. I can't bet against those guys. I just can't. I think Hedman will be fine as the captain replacement for Steven Stamkos. Obviously, losing Stamkos, you can't really replace him. They try to, or like they do in a sense with Jake Gensel, but you don't necessarily get that same feeling, that same locker room presence that Stamkos really left in Tampa Bay. But he's going to be a good first liner for them. I will say that. Gensel's going to put up points. He's going to be good with whoever he plays with. And a couple sneaky ads. Cam Atkinson, I don't mind. Connor Sheary on the third line, they already had, but he's a decent third line along with Nick Paul. And Zemgus Girgensons, he's an all right guy to throw in on the fourth line. Their defense took a hit losing Sergachev. That I didn't like that for them. Brian McDonough and JJ Moser come in. I don't like their defense as much as I did last year, but it's still serviceable. And yeah, Vasilevsky's just got to stay healthy. I think they're still a playoff team. They're slowly regressing, but they're still got the compete level. They still got the stars. There's no reason why Tampa should miss unless, like you said, Justin, things go wrong.
Now maybe we see Connor Sheary, Jake Gensel play on the same line again, and we remember what happened last time they played on the same line. So
Your
we'll see.
nostalgia kicking in.
Go
Believe it or
ahead,
not,
Nate.
here, fellas, we have a sweep. We all have Tampa at 4.
Ah,
There
there
we
we go.
go.
I know. I mean, you guys pretty much nailed all the points. Vasilevsky, I mean, we gotta give him a little bit of I think benefit of the doubt. He was coming off a major injury last year, so I think this year, I think it's less of the Tampa defense regressing and more of just him being healthier. But
Mhm.
Braden Point's still good. Kucherov's good. Gensel,
Yes.
production wise, should mirror Stamkos this year, in my opinion. Bottom
Mhm.
six is a little weak, but I mean, Tampa's Tampa. It's hard to bet against Tampa, so yeah, I have them in my 4.
Tampa's Tampa. That's really about it.
We should just left at that.
Tampa's
We should have
Tampa.
just said Tampa's Tampa. They're gonna make the playoffs because they're Tampa. But speaking of playoffs, we for sure have the next three teams as divisional spots in the Atlantic Division, according to our own standings. Nick, we'll let you kick this off at third in the Atlantic.
I have the Toronto Maple Leafs at third. Look, Marner,
Okay.
Nylander, Matthews, they're always going to produce in the regular season. Defense is good. It's not great. I know you are probably a lot higher on it than I am, Kerwin. I mean, OEL on your second line isn't my favorite. He's a bottom defenseman. He's a third line defenseman getting paid to play top 4 minutes. I know we had a bounce back, but I don't know. I mean, Tanev and Riley should be a reliable pair. I actually don't hate it. Left wing looks weak. Nyes, McMahon, Yarncroke. Two of those guys are going to be on the first and second line. I don't love that. I do like the center depth though. I do like Marner, Tavares, Domi, and Kampf. Um, Goaltending is boom or bust, and I think this is what's going to determine whether Toronto finishes third or fourth. Both of the starting goaltenders for Toronto haven't played more than 30 games in a season. Even if they split, it's going to be a career high in games for both Stolars and Wool. I know they're both coming off good seasons, but it's small sample sizes. Goaltending for Toronto is the biggest question mark by far this season.
It is definitely a question mark for them, and a question mark for goaltending as well is the Boston Bruins in signing Jeremy Swayman because that is still ongoing. And Don Sweeney got a bit fired up the other day about it in the media in the press conference he had with the media. But speaking of which team, the Boston Bruins is who I have third in the Atlantic Division. I just think if they can't sign Swayman here, they're in a lot of trouble. And they moved on from Allmark, really banking on Swayman. I do really love Swayman. I think he's among the top tier goalies in the league, top seven, maybe top 10. I don't think he's in the top five. But I really do like him as a goalie. They lost some pieces, but they made their defense even better, which is scary because Boston's known for having a big, strong, hard to play against defense. And they bring in Zadorov to play alongside Charlie McAvoy. And I am instantly scared as heck to play against that team. Zadorov, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Mason Lohrei, Andrew Pika, very respectable defense, but their bottom six is looking weaker than almost ever since Boston has had like Pasternak on the team, for example. Like their top six is fine when you look at Pasternak. They add Lindholm over the offseason. That's a decent. They needed a center. Like I think we can all agree, Boston so desperately
Desperately.
needed to get a center, and they did in Elias Lindholm, which I like for them. But like Zaka, Lindholm, Pasternak, and then Marchand, Coyle, Fabian Lysell, if he can take the bull by the horns and grab that last top six spot that they have there. And then from there, their bottom six, like I'm not going to list it off, but it's not that great. Like there's some names in there that probably should not be either scratched or in the AHL, in my opinion. I'm lower on Brazil than a lot of people are. Uh, I think it's Koepke that they have in their bottom six right now, I either should be scratched or in the AHL, in my opinion. And then yeah, if they can't figure out that goaltending, that bottom six is looking scary. Like scary in a bad way, not scary in I'm scared to play against them because I'm certainly not. Their defense is still very solid, and then we'll see what happens with Swayman. But I just think it also comes down to this too. I think there's two better teams in the Atlantic Division, and I'll get to those two. But who do you got?
For when you're saying you're not scared to play against the Boston Bruins?
Shush. I'm scared to play against their defense. I'm not scared of their bottom six
I think you're
whatsoever.
scared playing against that entire team based off of history. Anyways, we are on pace for a clean sweep here. I have the Boston Bruins as well.
No,
Uh,
no, no, no.
Uh-uh.
Nick had
I've got
Toronto.
Toronto at three,
no,
fella.
me and you, Kerwin. I think we've got every single team the same so far.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Not. Nick's
Oh, I thought
picks
you meant
are a
for
little
third in
out
the
there.
Atlantic. Yeah, yeah. We're we're
Nick's
we're
picks are a little out there, but
we're
yeah.
just rolling. We're just rolling right now.
Anyways, yeah, the Boston Bruins, you got all the points right, and it is very scary if they don't sign Jeremy Swayman. Because then you got to throw Jonas Korpisalo in, and you saw what he did last year. Yeah, exactly. Nikita Zadorov just makes that defense that much better, and you have the double Lindholms wearing 27 and 28 now, which will be extremely confusing to watch.
Yeah,
But
for real.
and they've got almost the same number too. But yeah, I think the other two teams on paper in the regular season are just better.
So who's let's see if this trend keeps on continuing. Second in the Atlantic Division, Justin.
That's as long as you don't have any bias. I have the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it should be the same. Uh,
Uh-oh.
yeah, no, they're just not as good as the other team that's above them that won the Stanley Cup last year. Uh, Maple Leafs. Is Austin Matthews going to score 69 goals again? I'm not sure, but if he does, then you're going to be just fine. The defense, though, it's a question. It's definitely a question. I do really like Jake McCabe as a top four piece. I don't love Liljegren if he makes the top four. I do like Yanni Hakanpää if he could play on your third pairing, just so he's got to stay healthy. I think there's a couple question marks with the Leafs, especially in net and on defense, but they do have one of the best forward cores in the NHL. You can't argue against that. So I think they'll finish right where they did last year. Or sorry, spot higher than last year.
Nick, do you want to go? You want to go next for second in the Atlantic?
I mean, I have Boston. I think there's no way Swayman doesn't get signed. They brought Zadorov in, they brought Pedersen, Lindholm in. There's
Mhm.
no like Bruins are going all in. Swayman is going to be signed. And I understand when you look at the Bruins, their bottom six is there's not a lot of goal scoring there. When I look at this Bruins defense, this is like that big bad Bruins vibe I get from them. They're just gonna hit everybody they see, especially with Zadorov. This team is gonna be a nightmare to go up against, especially in an NHL where speed and skill is now up on the rise. The fact that you have the Bruins kind of playing that old school style of hockey with that mix of still skill and speed, the Bruins are going to be good. The Bruins are going to be good. And Swayman behind that defense, yeah, I'm so much higher on the Bruins, especially like I said, I know their bottom line production wise might not be great, but like Trent Frederick's one of the best PKers. Not one of the best, but he's underrated. Trent Frederick can PK, and their whole bottom six is just going to hit you. They're going to tire out people and hit you and hit you and hit you. Oh, I can't wait to watch the Bruins. I'm high on them.
For 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 me, I agree with you in the sense that they're going to be like terrible to play against for any team. Like they're going to be throwing the ball left, right, and center. But I do think the Bruins lack in the speed department a bit. I don't think they're the fastest team on ice or on paper or on the ice product wise. But a team that I have second in the Atlantic, and maybe the bias is coming through
Oh,
for my
No, it
number one
definitely
pick
is.
soon to be. My number two pick is the Florida Panthers, the reigning Stanley Cup champions. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's not going to be a spoiler now. I do have the Toronto Maple Leafs winning the Atlantic Division, but I'll save that till after I explain why I have Florida at number two. And I don't hate what they did in the offseason. I don't hate what Florida did in the offseason. They got some bargain players at bargain prices, and they made their roster either just as good or maybe a little bit better than it was last year. When you look at them picking up Nate Schmidt on defense, he's probably going to play on their third pair, which is a solid, steady defenseman. Adam Boquist as well for that bottom pairing, and then they still have the same guys repeating from last year, like Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad, Dmitry Kulikov, Nico Mikkola. Like those guys are really solid, but I'm not going to go through their forward group. A lot of it is still the same. They got a couple new role players, but for me, I just think they're going to have a Stanley Cup hangover a little bit. They played a lot of hockey, obviously Game 7 in the Stanley Cup final. I think they're going to have a bit of a Stanley Cup hangover, and they're just not going to perform to their full capabilities in the regular season. That's not to say once they get to the playoffs that they can go on another run. They probably will, to be honest with you. But I'll just quickly get my number one out of the way and then let you guys talk about Florida for your guys' number one. Toronto, to me, did a lot of things that I like, and I think it is so crucial to them this year to get the top spot in the Atlantic Division. When you think of why Toronto has struggled in the playoffs in previous seasons, it's because they always finish second or third in that Atlantic Division, and they're playing immediately another Atlantic team, Boston or Florida or Tampa Bay. These are tough opponents. Toronto has never finished first in the division, excluding the Canadian division in the bubble year when that was just a mess. But anyway, in the Atlantic division, the Leafs, since Matthews has joined the team, haven't won the Atlantic and faced a wild card team. So I think it's so crucial for them. I think I just like the pieces they added. You mentioned Yanni Hakanpää, Justin. I love him as a bottom pair guy. I really don't hate Oliver Ekman Larson giving him a shot at quarterbacking either the first or second power play unit. And for me, the biggest reason I have the Leafs winning the Atlantic Division is Craig Berube. I think he is going to do so much good things for this team. Training camp started the other day, and there's already so much coming out about how hard he's working these guys, the style, the brand of hockey he wants to install into this locker room. There's so many good things that Berube is going to bring to this roster, and I think the Stars are just going to go nuts. I don't Marner contract year. He's probably going to go nuts. Matthews probably going to put up 60 because he can and he will. And then Nylander playing center, that's a new experiment. But if that can work out, I feel like I've ranted on for too long about the Leafs, but it may be biased. But if Nick can put Edmonton first in the Pacific and their defense is worse than Toronto's, then I can put Toronto first in the Atlantic.
Mm, mm, I mean, you know what? I love the saying "time will tell." I will be surprised. I will be so surprised if Toronto comes in first. Like I said, I don't even have them beating Boston, but I mean, I'm not going to bet against the Stanley Cup winners. I'm not going to bet against Florida. I know they lost Montour, but this team is still good. I mean, their second line defense a little shaky with Mikola and Kulikov, but I mean, Sam Reinhart. Look at their top six is what Sam Reinhart, Barkov. You have Sam Bennett in there. This team is gonna produce in the regular season. They're gonna produce in the postseason. Like I said, the second line defense is a little worrisome, but when you have Lundell, when you have Lusterainen, when you have Barkov, who are elite defensive forwards, it can help make up for a weaker back end on the defense. And Bobrovsky's great. He's still proved to the NHL. He's one of the elite goaltenders. Yeah, give me Florida all day.
Yeah,
Fair points.
I completely agree with you, Nick. I don't think I'd spend too much time on it. Look at the offense. Kachuk, Barkov, Reinhardt, Verhage, Sam Bennett's such an underrated player. Then when Rodriguez is in the top six, you saw what he's done before, right? I think they definitely will need to make a move at the trade deadline to fix that defense because you don't love the second pairing of Mikula and Kulikov, but you have Sergei Bobrovsky. The guys won two Veznas and could have won a Conn Smythe. So I think Florida will finish right there first in the Atlantic Division.
Those are fair points. I could see him definitely finishing first. I just really like Toronto, and I am a bit biased. But let's quickly, we're going to do this a bit different because we're running out of time here in this episode compared to last. But for our wildcard teams, we'll put up our 10 through 3 in the wildcard right now. So you'll see all the teams we have missing in the East right now. And we're going to quickly reveal who we have as our two wildcard teams. So for me, the second wildcard team in the East will be the Detroit Red Wings. I don't love their team, but I think it's just good enough to edge out Washington in probably the last game or two of the season, in my opinion, and grab that final wild card spot. I don't think the Metro's strong enough to grab two spots, so I think they're only going to get the divisional spots in the Rangers, Devils, and Hurricanes. But other than that, I have the Lightning. So Lightning is my number one wild card team because, again, it's Tampa, and then Detroit's my number two. Nick, what do you got?
I got Tampa number one with you, and then I have Washington as getting that second wild card. I know Justin's not happy. I like I said, I'm high on their
Justin,
additions. I'm high on their additions.
Same.
I really think this is going to be an all-around good team. They're going to surprise people, snag that second wild card spot.
I at the second wild card spot, I had the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you guys can be biased, so can I. But I don't think I'm
fair.
as biased as you guys are. Um, I did want to put Detroit there, and I could definitely see them getting in. As like I said, they missed the playoffs because John Tortorella pulled his goalie in regulation. But the Penguins were right there as well. Better power play. I think they can get in this year if things go well. But that second spot's truly up for grabs. And first, I think we have a clean sweep of the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, both spots could be up for grabs, but the Lightning just have the most star power out of any of these teams, I think. And I think they should get into a spot, but we'll see what happens. Like you said, Nick, only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Yeah, Tampa Bay for me, I think, is a lock to grab at least one of those two wild card spots. But time will tell. These are what we have for the Eastern Conference standings in the NHL this upcoming season. That's going to be the end of this one. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. Stay tuned. Episode 4 MVPs and X Factors of the What's Buzzin podcast. Thanks for watching.